Hi, welcome to the Aga Khan Museum. My name is Michael Chagnon, and I'm curator here at the museum. I'm going to welcome you today at the storage vault, where we're going to look at some manuscripts, but also discuss some of the protocols that we've had to put in place, as you can imagine, in handling objects due to the pandemic. So we'll be able to welcome everyone back to the museum in very, very clean and sanitary conditions. So that as a visitor, you'll be able to walk through the space and feel safe and enjoy yourself. All of the details are on our website at agakhanmuseum.org. But here also in storage, when we're doing research for upcoming exhibitions and just research into our collections, we've also placed some safety measures, put some safety measures in place. And that includes not being able to handle the objects directly. We have gloves, as you can see. This is not a fashion statement. These are gloves that we're required to wear. Of course, we're keeping our face masks on so that we don't contaminate the space or have any sort of risk of infection. And also, I usually work very closely with our collections manager. This is Karen Donaldson. And she'll be helping me today, but we're going to keep social distancing as we look at some works on view here in storage. So I've asked Karen if she would be able to pull a couple manuscripts that I'm considering to put into our fall exhibition, which will be opening in November. These are two works from the Aga Khan Museum collection. They're manuscripts, they're illustrated manuscripts. The one that's open here is a hamse, or quintet, of the poet Nizami. And it contains over 20 illustrations from all of the 5 different stories that are contained in the text. These are very well-known stories in the Persian literary canon, including the story of Layla and Majnun, Khosrow and Shirin, and then a section at the end that actually focuses on the exploits and adventures of Alexander the Great, who's known in the Persian tradition as Iskandar. So here we have a folio that I'm looking at right now that hopefully our videographer will be able to come in and have a close-up of. This is a famous scene from Khosrow and Shirin, where Shirin encounters the sculptor Farhad. Farhad is tasked with cutting a channel through the mountain for milk to pass through, in fact. And here we see an encounter where the two of them are meeting each other, and up in the upper left we have a little gray box, and in fact what we see there is sort of a reference to the main love story. We see two princely lovers encountering each other, and that's a veiled reference to what's going on in the rest of the story, this love between Khosrow and Shirin. I'm going to ask Karen if she can help us turn the page here so we can look at another folio. So I have to step away and let Karen do her work. And maybe we can get a close-up of this next illustration. This is from an earlier story, it's an earlier text in the quintet known as the Treasury of Secrets.
In this famous scene from the Hamse, an old woman approaches the king, Sultan Sanjar, and his retinue while they're setting out to go hunting. She's approached Sultan Sanjar to complain about mistreatment by his troops. When he responds that such a matter is but a petty concern in light of other issues he must face, the old woman puts the king in his place, effectively saying, "How can you go out and conquer territory if you cannot even manage your own soldiers?" Interestingly, Sultan Sanjar was an actual historical figure, ruling Iran and Central Asia less than a century before the poet Nizami composed his text.
This is a really astounding illustration. Just the colors are so vibrant in the costumes that the various figures are wearing. The just dynamism of their poses really gives you a great effect of movement and bustle in this group of courtiers and the king who are encountering this older woman. The manuscript was actually produced in 1527, so this is the early 16th century manuscript, produced in Shiraz in southwestern Iran, which was a great center of manuscript production for many centuries. And this is a really lovely painting within the manuscript, which we're considering for the fall exhibition. Wonderful use of gold, great use of color for the flowers and the costumes. It's quite gorgeous and very well preserved. We're going to switch over to another manuscript also in our collection, and I'll once again ask Karen to make the switch here. Thank you, Karen. As you can see, Karen is doing very detailed, meticulous handling of these manuscripts, not only so that we can stay within our safety protocols, but also just our normal safety protocols. So many of these manuscripts, as you can see, are in old bindings. Sometimes they're original to the manuscript, and other times the guts of the book would have been taken out and given a new cover. But they're often very elaborate, tooled leather covers, or in this case, a lacquer cover. This is a painted board that's then covered in resin to create a sort of glossy effect. Quite a lovely binding here. But these become very brittle over time, and they tend to wear down. So we have to, as you can see, you may have seen Karen nudging the book ever so slightly so that it opens and we don't do any harm at all to any of the object, its binding, its contents, none of it. This manuscript is dated to 1593, and it's quite a rarity in the field of Persian manuscripts. It's a manuscript of a text called Anvar Sohaili, which translates to the Lights of Canopus. It's a Persian 15th century Persian version of a very, very old set of animal fables and other tales, originally written in Sanskrit, that then got translated into Arabic and later into other languages. And so the well-known Kalila wa Dimna is in fact an Arabic text. This is the animal fables, the tales of the two jackals, Kalila and Dimna. That's an earlier version of this same text. And so here we have the Anvar Sohaili of 1593, which has a colophon that is information at its end about the circumstances of the manuscript's production. So it gives us the date. It also gives us the name of the calligrapher. And interestingly, it says that it was made for the painter Sadiki Beg. Now, Sadiki Beg was the court librarian under the Safavid Shah of Iran, Shah Abbas the Great or Abbas the First. And it would seem that Sadiki Beg accrued enough money in his position and became to become an art patron in his own right, not only just an artist and a librarian. So it seems as though he commissioned this manuscript for himself. And interestingly, the illustrations stylistically correspond in many ways to Sadiki's own painting style. So it's assumed that he himself illustrated the book for himself. So it's a really interesting story just in terms of this manuscript itself. Now again, produced in 1593, by the 1610s, a wealthy noble in Mughal India came into ownership of this book. So it had already left Iran maybe 20 years after it was produced, and it seems to have been sold to a patron in India. Meaning Sadiki didn't keep it for himself, or it didn't stay within his, if he had family. So it's a very interesting manuscript. Also interesting are these really extraordinary illustrations. There are 107 illustrations in this manuscript. and they do not seem to conform to any known compositions. Oftentimes we see various compositions in Persian manuscripts that are repeated. Artists often had a stock set of images that they would rely on, and they would create their own versions of. Here we see pictures that have entirely new subject matter, including these two men at a shop. This is a close-up shot of two guys just having a conversation in an urban space. This is really just this sort of slice of daily life is really almost unprecedented in the history of Persian painting up to this point. And so we have really wonderful and inventive set of illustrations here. Shall we turn the page to another one that we have marked? I'll show another page as well that really illustrates these very unique vignettes. Do you want to come around to the front to capture that? So this is a story of two travelers, one who is intrepid and one who's a bit lazy. They reach a stop at a point on their journey where they encounter a rock that has a blank spot on it. As you can see, there's this one rock that the man in blue corner of it that's sort of left in reserve, left blank. In the story, the rock actually sends them messages about how to proceed on their journey and really not to pay attention to what they see, because what they see is an illusion. So it's a really wonderful commentary on the idea of images themselves and whether images can be separated from reality. So what we see, if that's just a sort of phenomenon that may or may not be real, it's very matrix. But it's a very wonderful image, it's a beautiful image, and again, really well preserved. The colors are very nice, and a little bit of tarnishing in the silver, and which would be used to show flowing water. But otherwise, really unprecedented and a lovely, lovely picture. It's a real treat to be able to see these again in storage and to examine them a little bit further once we get off camera. Anyhow, I really wanted to thank you for joining us today. You can see some of the measures that we're taking here to keep you safe, to keep us safe, to keep our objects safe. And we really do look forward to welcoming you now that we are newly reopened. Please do come visit us. And if you can't make it, please visit our website, agahanmuseum.org, or you can find us on social media. Thanks so much. We hope to see you soon.